a special meeting to cover the topic of strategic planning. Let's bring the meeting to order. Mrs. Fleckenstein, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a quorum of board members present. Mr. Evans is excused tonight. And with that, Mr. Knuth, would you please introduce Mr. McGowan to the board and the audience?
Absolutely. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Kevin McGowan. Mr. McGowan is a fellow school superintendent representing the Brighton School District, and through our affiliation through the New York State Council of School Superintendents, Kevin McGowan also assists schools with their strategic planning initiatives. Over the last several months, we've been talking to the community about getting this process going. Our initial strategic plan that was started over 5 years ago expires this year. So this is the natural life cycle to start over. So much has changed in public education. So many board members have changed, teachers, administrators. So we felt this is the right time to rebuild a cohesive process to chart a roadmap for the future for our district. So I'll hand it over to Kevin McGowan.
Great, thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to all of you. It's I've been in a lot of boardrooms, and I have to tell you, I wish you could see everybody without the mask on, because it seems like I'll smile for you. I'm smiling. All right, there we go. I promise you that there's a smile the whole time on this, but there's a lot of great energy in this room, so I'm really excited to join you and have a quick conversation. I think it was 6:30 hard stop, right, for another presentation? Or?
We probably even a little earlier because people have to travel home for that next meeting.
Oh, got it. Okay, so no problem. So I can stay, I can be as short, comes pretty naturally, as you can see, or as long as you like, and answer as many questions, and talk for as long as you want about it, and follow up with you later if you have other questions too. So, as Eric mentioned, I do, my passion, my heart, my full-time focus is on the Brighton Central School District. I've been there for 13 years. I was the superintendent of Warsaw before that for 3 years, and over time we've done a lot of this work in our district and are very, very proud of it. And our school board, I think very similar to you and to this type of district, my familiarity with Skinnios would be, looks at public education and how we can also give back and be a leader in public education and think about the work that happens all over the place and contribute to that in a bigger way. So that leads to a lot of involvement in NISBA work, on our school board's part, NISCUS work, on my part, our district's part, and our administrators are involved in a lot of these types of activities. So over time what's developed is through NISCUS and a professional development group in NISCUS called LEAF, a service that's been offered around strategic planning to take kind of the best thinking that happens around, put that into what could work in terms of process for other districts, and then have the chance to go out and share that with other communities and do it in a way that we think can impact other school districts and be helpful. Because there are people that do this work in a lot of different ways and who are very, very good at it and offer great thinking around it. This is supposed to be a combination of that kind of work and our own thinking on what seems to make the most sense in the school district based on a lot of experience around the table doing this type of work. So for me tonight, it's really just walking you through what that process looks like and then answering any questions that you might have and just kind of sharing the space with you in terms of helping you understand what the process looks like. I'll start out by telling you, since you've had a strategic plan and are having this conversation, you likely don't need to be sold on the idea of the importance of a plan. But for any community members that aren't listening and wondering, well, why would a district do this? What is the entire point? The first couple slides just explain that, which is one, there are advantages to putting a plan together and what it gives you. First, when you involve a lot of people in planning in any organization, with a school district being a great example of that, you tend to build trust and cooperation, right? You build a team. If you have stakeholders involved, and it's not just your plan as a Board of Education or a leadership team or administrative plan, but a lot of people are at the table, they tend to build trust in you and a sense of cooperation across the district. And for every person you have involved, they're likely to tell a few people that they are close with or neighbors with or in a community with, yeah, I worked on that, it makes sense, and these are things that we should support. Now you're building a whole lot of support for the initiatives that you'd like to have in place. It gives people safety in the sense that they trust you have an idea of where you're headed, that you're investing their resources appropriately, and that you are safeguarding both their trust but also what they would like to see in terms of their resources being spent well. It gives people confidence that the organization, frankly, has an idea what they're doing, that they're paying attention, that they're trying to grow, they're trying to improve, they're trying to find a direction instead of just existing every day. The reality is that in public education, we don't have a tremendous amount of competition like a private company or corporation would that has to think about a bottom line, competitiveness. Our kids, our clients, our customers are likely to keep coming back. And so we really need to be driven by something else to keep improving and to keep growing, because we're not necessarily driven by the idea of going bankrupt like a company, right? So our clients are going to continue to come. We have to drive ourselves to think about improvement all the time, have a plan to get there, and be looking for something that is aspirational. Room to grow is really important in these conversations. And ultimately, the idea of direction and just tell me what to do already happens a lot within organizations. There are a lot of great people in every school district that are doing the work each and every day. And they may not be in a leadership position, they may not have chosen that path, even as a department chair or any other position like that, yet they just say, I will do anything. Just tell me what to do already. I am committed to this work. I want to grow and improve. I didn't need to be on the planning team. I don't need to run the department. I don't need to be the principal. Just tell me what to do already, and I will do it. But I'd like to know that you're thinking about the next step, the next step, the next step. And that's what a plan does for you. In terms of a process and the types of things I think it's important to consider.
Sometimes it's laggy.
We'll probably jump now 7 slides, which you'll think, oh good, now it's much further. There we go. When you're thinking about a process, and I know you've looked at different ways to get at this, I think it's just simply important to consider the quality. Will it actually improve outcomes for students, relationships in the district? Will it build collaboration across the district? Is it practical? Can it be reasonably, effectively implemented? I will tell you there are some of these plans that are beautiful work, deep thinking, thorough, thoughtful, highly intellectual. They look fantastic. They are so fantastic, in fact, they sit on a shelf and make fantastic artwork, right? They hold a lot of papers down. But do they actually impact the work? Are they actually the living, breathing document that drives conversations among all your committees, among all your district-wide efforts? Is it part of your budget process? Do people look at each other and say, well, where is that in our plan? The other thing that happens in districts like yours and mine, a lot of people with a lot of ideas would like to do a lot of things a lot of the time. And you get this implementation fatigue, right? So is it a supportive plan that allows people room to grow and present ideas that can be incorporated in the plan, but can you be thoughtful in that? I'll give you a great example of something that's happened to us over time. Our K-2 building is a Habits of the Mind National Recognition School. Betty Cadillac, the author of Habits of the Mind, came to our school. Incredible honor, great work. I have 3 kids. My youngest, my 9-year-old, I often say my daughter, I have 2 older boys. My daughter is by far my favorite child. We're sitting at dinner at a restaurant and waiting, and my older boys are getting frustrated because somebody's not coming, and my little one looks at them and says, you really need to think more flexibly. You need to shift your mindset. It was one of my favorite moments ever. Mostly because they were humiliated, had no idea how to respond to their little sister. But when she left the K-2 building and went to the intermediate building where we hadn't implemented Habits of Mind, the language that she was using and her classmates were using was much less familiar to the 3rd grade teachers in that building. They are great people, by the way, who have a sense of what Habits of the Mind is and over time have grown in that area. But here we have this school of recognition where that's the language kids are using all the time. They're talking about their thinking all the time. And it's not implemented in the same way 3 through 12. Like we missed an opportunity to leverage this incredible investment we made because it wasn't planned in a format like this. It wasn't planned with, okay, how do we ramp that up over time? Let's invest there and then we can bridge that innovation to other places. So it needs to be something that drives you to that place. The other question is it supportive, right? Will it actually be helpful, or is it just one more project to say that you did it? Or is it actually going to drive improvement and the work that you're going to be doing every day? And again, is it efficient? Is it money well spent? Is it worth the investment on behalf of your community to do something like this? Because some of them can be a huge investment, and again, for a binder that looks great, sounds great, you involve a lot of people, good conversation, but then you walk away from it, and it's not as meaningful to the board. Mandated plans, which you don't have, so I'll go quickly through this, but these are things like the CDEP plans and other mandated plans in the state. It sets a foundation for all of those. If you ever had to do any of those plans, which I think would be highly unlikely in a district like this, the information that you're developing in that plan feeds into each of those state plans as well. The type of process and the timeline this looks like. And I'm going to go into detail on what each of these steps actually are, but I sometimes think it's helpful for people to see, like, well, what does it actually mean? Like, hands-on, what would that look like? The first would be, in a general sense, if you did it starting in the fall, and yours wouldn't, we could start tomorrow actually, you do a temperature check. And the temperature check is going out to ask your community, how are we doing? We're taking our temperature. What is it that you'd like to see for your schools? And you go out and introduce this as, we're really excited to look towards the future, we're strategically planning where to go, and so we would like feedback from you. And we use a platform called Thought Exchange. Do you use Thought Exchange at all?
I'm familiar with it, we don't use it here yet.
So the real quick gist of Thought Exchange for all of you is that you go out and ask people a question, they click on a link, and it's as simple as they click on the link, the question comes up and says, how are we doing? Here's the introduction. We're doing this plan, we're putting together a lot of ideas, but we need feedback from you in the community. We'd like you to drive this conversation. Very open-ended. So share your ideas, and people share about 140 characters at a time. I really like AP coursework. I think you need to offer even more AP courses. Enter. They can enter another thought. I would like to see more enrichment opportunities at the K through 5 level. I think we do a great job at the older level, but not enough at the elementary. Enter. I'd like to see more intervention programs for my child. Enter. I'd like to see more summer programs. Enter. I think the quality of teaching is outstanding in this school district. Keep providing professional development. Enter. They can enter as many thoughts as they would like. Now, it's vulnerable because it's anonymous and people can enter anything. I'll tell you, I've done hundreds of exchanges in our district and in other districts. People actually handle this really, really well. As a person who's been on the receiving end of significant social media feedback, and I say feedback in, well, we get it in all different ways, right? So it's not necessarily very nice. I feel very vulnerable all the time to that. This platform actually works really, really well. It is also moderated, and comments that are personally attacking, that are rude, hurtful, or off-topic are removed from the exchange. The rest of it, though, is in the exchange, and it actually is very helpful to have it kind of all out there. It's a good thing. And again, as somebody who's done hundreds of these, but also been on the other end of not so great social media stuff before, I can tell you this is the way to go. People do really handle it well. The beauty of it is after people enter their thoughts, they swipe to the next screen, and every thought that's been entered by anybody comes up on the screen one at a time, and they rate those thoughts 1 star to 5 stars. So it kind of leverages this notion that people like to click like on things, like there's a chemical reaction to clicking like or to reacting to posts. It leverages that behavior, but in a way that's more productive. So if they really like a thought that somebody shares, you know, you're an individual and you see that thought about more advanced coursework for kids, you click 5 on that. And then when they finish rating as many thoughts as they want, they click to the final screen, and that's the Discover screen where they see how every thought is ranking. So it's a very open source concept where everybody in your community then sees where things are ranking. Quick example of how this works really well in terms of particular topics that some focus groups or some small groups of people like drive home to you, we need to be doing this. We have had over time a conversation in our community about start times and people hoping that at the secondary level we could move start times earlier, which we're completely open to the idea. There's no arguing the science in that. It's a logistical and an investment issue, right? Does it make sense? Do all families want that? How does that impact transportation for younger kids, right? There's all these other questions, and it's very expensive for us to do it because of the limitations we have in transportation. Many of the people in the start time conversation, some of the most ardent advocates have said, everybody wants it. Trust us, everybody wants it, right? How often have you heard that as community members or as board members? Everybody wants it, promise. Well, often when that's gone into the exchange, we find out that not everybody wants it. it hasn't always bubbled up to the 5-star level, right? So all of a sudden you have this opportunity to say, well, it's right there. Not everybody is, in effect, rated that way. And there's filtering tools and there's ways to do the analysis. But my point is, it's a great way to gather the information at the beginning of this process. We would move on. The next step would be, as that exchange closes, I would meet with you as a Board of Education and your leadership team to work on mission, vision, core values. That's a 2 to 3 hour session. Usually we can schedule it prior to a board meeting or another night if you prefer, where we go through, here's what mission means, and we define your mission. Here's what vision means, and we define that, and here's what core values means in the context of a strategic plan, and we define that. Now, we don't wordsmith that night. It's not this torturous, laborious exercise of chart paper. Those of you who've been through these things before, where the former English teacher is just dying to get that one phrase in, and will not let go of that one phrase. We don't do that. In fact, it's a lot of information gathering on each of those topics. I basically teach you about mission and then vision and core values, not at the basic level. You probably have a pretty darn good handle on that. But then we go through and say, give us your feedback, give us your feedback, give us your feedback, and then take it away, write and send drafts back to you to weigh in on. And that work sets the stage for the next step. The next step is your stakeholder day. That's the blueprint day. That's 40, 50 people, whatever number makes the most sense. I work with her to identify that. I think you have a team identified. That group of people then would come to the table, and they'd first weigh in on the mission, vision, core values. And they would give you feedback. Yes, that makes sense. It does make sense. So it brings them into that loop and that part of that conversation. Part of the data review, the temperature check, is going to give us themes or priority areas, we call them. So it's kind of the buckets that your work falls into. And I'll give you an example. Rigorous coursework for all students comes up often. I've used that example multiple times. But a lot of times in communities, people are saying, I want every child to have the opportunity to be challenged across the entire curriculum. And so that becomes a bucket or a theme, we call it a priority area, that some of the people on that day, some of those 50 people will work on. And there will be 4 or 5, sometimes more, priority areas that bubble up in your data. When we do the mission, vision, core values, I'll present to you what seem to be the priority areas and give you an opportunity to tell me, no, Kevin, you missed the mark. That actually, we saw different kinds of thoughts. We should have this priority area. We should add to that. College and career pathways, things that often come up with people along the way. And you, again, can shape those before you're going back to this large group of 50 people. So then on the rest of that day, those 50 people are divided up into those priority area groups, and they develop strategies. They simply have to look at each other and say, well, what would be our objective be in the rigorous coursework area? What do we want to accomplish? Write the objective. And then they can brainstorm every idea under the sun to meet that objective. And they don't have to plan. They don't have to figure out how. They don't have to figure out when. In fact, we don't want them to do that at all. We want them to stay away from that. That's the job of the leadership team to do. Because what happens is if you have people planning that day, they spend the entire time saying, oh, yeah, we should have this group of people, and I know this group, and first of all, at the end of the day, they've spent billions of dollars, right? Because they don't have access to understanding the resources that might be available. They also don't know all the right committees that could work on that. That is actually the job of your leaders to figure out. That's day 3. Day 3 then is we come back and work with the leadership team to action plan and take all the ideas that are developed on that blueprint day and break them down now into how's that going to get done, when is that going to get done, and who's going to do that work. Because they know the resources that will be available, the K-12 committees and groups of people that are best capable to work on that and get that done. And then an action plan comes from there. Finally, all of that is put together for the district. All of the wordsmithing, all of the writing, all of the authorship happens. Drafts are created, sent back for the district to weigh in on, so it is your plan. But it takes away that having to sit in the room and have people write those pieces in that space. We really want to use the time with people in the room to gather ideas and to really exercise people's brain to offer feedback as opposed to having to write the chart paper and go through on a laptop and figure this out, figure that out. No, we really want to just get everybody's ideas out and include everybody in that conversation. It's presented to you formally to the community. It is then also prepared to be sent out to everybody and presented to faculties, to Rotary, to Kiwanis, to any community group that would be interested, PTA, PTSA, whatever the groups may be. All those materials are formulated for you as well. I think an important aspect of this are accountability updates as well. So at the end of the plan, we show where you could, as part of your board meeting agendas, have quarterly updates. So almost quarterly like report cards that we do for kids. We know that when we hold ourselves accountable, we know we have to give a report, and this is coming. We know that then the work definitely gets done because people know this is coming up. I've got to make sure that I've met with that committee and I'm prepared to present to the Board of Education and the committee and let them know where we are. That's where you're transitioning from a binder that looks good into a plan that also drives the work because you have scheduled reports on every one of the topics that are covered in the plan as well. It really then becomes seamlessly integrated into your budget process, into the other work that you're doing, and becomes kind of the backbone of the work, the blueprint itself. I mentioned to you each of these steps. They're in your handout tonight when you're reading them as you. They explain everything that I just said to you. Community feedback being the exchange, mission, vision, core values being that step one that helps you get together. The data review being part of the blueprint day where I work with the administrators on a presentation format that gets at what they would like to present in terms of the important pieces of data to them. Priority areas are those themes, those buckets I mentioned in the thought exchange that come from your data. Strategies are what is developed on that blueprint day by the large stakeholder group. Action planning is that third day. That's what's done with the leadership team to figure out the how, the when, and accountability updates are those board meeting presentations that I mentioned to you. A couple samples of the work are included as well in your packet. The community invite is on, is there, just a sample of the letter that goes out to your community to kind of give you a sense of what that tone is with people around. We're really excited to do this work. We'd like to gather your feedback. Please weigh in. The next piece is a sample mission statement that was done for another district. I actually think this one is a little more wordy than where some people land. You're really just identifying for people our core purpose is, our fundamental mission is the following. This is what we are here for. Vision is what does that look like? So our organization will be or become, will continue to be or will become the following in order to meet that mission or fulfill our purpose. And core values, which I think gets a little short shrift sometimes, I think are really important to identify. And we would do that with all of you and your leadership team to really establish who are we, what are we about, how do we operate, what are the values that we want to be known for. And when people look at our organization, they say that organization is for the following. You know, whether that's integrity, trust, care, kind, put children first in all your decisions. I think it's great to articulate that. I think it's an excellent tool when people start with you in the district, new staff members of all different roles, to be able to say this is who we are. I think it's also a very valuable tool to use with staff members who have been with you for some time and in all different circumstances when you want to sit down and say, you know what, this is what we're all about. Are you fulfilling our core values? And I think it's great to be able to communicate to the community, this is what we're about and this is who we are.
Kevin, this summer, our leadership team locked ourselves in a room for the better part of the day to address just that.
That's great.
We were calling it our core values, or the umbrella under which everything that we do falls under. And we came up with relationships, connections, and learning. So a lot of that, the core of that work, I think, is great. We need to do a better job of sharing that out to the whole community.
Dynamite. And that sets a great stage and feeds right into this conversation. So that will be a part of that first night. It's like the last 15, 20 minutes, and it will fit that right into your overall plan. That's dynamite. So you have a head start. This QR code and 9-digit code kind of gives you a sense for how when you're in the room gathering feedback through these thought exchanges, it gets utilized. So people can use that QR code, they just hold their phone up to it, it pops up on their screen, and instantly we're gathering feedback from people in the room. I don't have one set up for tonight, but it would be that simple. I would say to you, okay, I'm really curious what you think of the following. What are your suggestions about? And then I would toggle to another screen, and all of a sudden they'd all be coming up on the screen, and you'd be able to weigh in and see what other people are thinking. By the way, that also helps make space for the quiet ones and the marginalized. And what I mean by that is because it's anonymous, and because it goes out to everybody, and because everybody has an even footing in the conversation, it tends to bring a lot more opinions to the surface. I'm not shocked probably to hear this, because we barely know each other, but we know each other enough. I don't hesitate to talk. My wife is a lot quieter. If we were in a meeting together, if we were in a focus group conversation, for example, I would likely dominate the space and suck all the air out of the room in that conversation. her opinion is awfully important. I would make the argument, especially in front of her, and if this is live streamed to her, that hers is more important. I would want her opinion to get out somehow. In these opportunities, when I gather feedback this way, everybody feels very comfortable entering their feedback because their name's not associated with it, and it doesn't require them to put their hand up in the air, which is not easy for everyone. So it really brings out feedback from all groups. So that's just what it looks like. And the general agenda for the day, again, that's in your packet too, give you an idea of what that day looks like. I won't read that catch you either. The priority areas for one district, this is again just an example, came from their data. Their plan revolved around pathways to success, and the sub-bullets underneath are just common phrases that came up in their data, common ideas that people wanted to address. 21st century learning, connections and collaboration, innovation, and equity for all students. That was just this particular district. They are different everywhere. This is a very specific example of an action plan that becomes part of the plan. It's done on the third day. It all came from the ideas generated on that blueprint day with the large group. But on that third day, that action planning day, this is what was developed with the administrators. And it clearly says what their objective is in the area, what the action steps are they would take to meet that objective, who's going to do the work, when they're going to get it done, and who's going to facilitate that. So there's no doubt, there's no question in the organization. People know exactly where things are going, where they're heading, and who's going to be getting that done. And then the reports that are done quarterly for the Board of Education revolve around all of these action plans. Here's where we're at. This is a general summary. We've gotten this done so far. We've got this coming up going forward. Tuesday night, as a matter of fact, next Tuesday night, our Board of Education will be hearing our blueprint updates. Right now, mid-year, we do them now, and then we do them again in the budget process because there are budget and spending implications to some of the recommendations that come from what we do, so we want that to be completely integrated. Works out very, very well. It's our intention to involve a lot of people in the conversation, allow stakeholder input, engage members of the community that might not otherwise be engaged, facilitate a discussion that brings all the skinny Alice ideas up to the surface, provide the district with a roadmap that is absolutely transparent, it's accountable, it's regularly followed, enable the district to grow and find that room for growth and innovation as well. And then again, something that can be implemented, that just doesn't sound good, check a box, we did it, yeah, we planned, we strategically planned, no. This becomes the backbone of your work. I think the advantages of it, it's a very collaborative process, a lot of people involved in it. That shared mission, vision, and goals, I think, are super important as well, in addition to core values being something that you can rely on as a district. This is a process that's focused, it's practical, it's measurable, and it's an efficient process that allows you to get state aid by going through this particular organization as well. What questions can I answer for you?
I'll go first, I guess. What is the general time frame it takes a district to do this? If we, let's say we started February 1st, which I think is aggressive, but that would be great.
So it really comes down to scheduling, right? So where it can happen. I would always suggest people give that first thought exchange 3 to 4 weeks. And so when we look at February, we want to have a conversation, and I talked to Eric about what's your sense, should you count the February break week or not count it? Because some people might not be focused on things like that week, but generally I'd say give that a month. So if we're talking ballpark, it's a month to do that, and those other 3 days can be accomplished, I mean, if they can be scheduled, they can be accomplished in a week. I mean, you know, there's essentially 3 nights, you know, 2 of them longer than the other. So it just really comes down to when we can schedule them and when we can have people come in. I generally say to people 2 months is a safe time frame because by the time things are written, developed, drafted back in front of you as a Board of Education, 2 months is a healthy, good, tight time frame that keeps people focused on it and gets it done.
So if I'm understanding correctly, do you think we could have our strategic plan done in 2 months?
Sure.
Wonderful.
Again, as long as it can be
I mean,
yeah, as long as it's not
maybe
conflict,
if you told me 3 months or 5 months, I'd still say great.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I think by doing it now and talking about it now, so if you think about it, so say it does take 3 months, just because by the time of the schedule,
Right.
and I've got lots of, you know, basketball games and course concerts to go to, right? So I want to be able to do it, and I've got another person that I work with, and we would do it with you too. But, you know, the idea of having it done now during your budget process, I think is key, but also driving summer work for your staff.
Right, so that we can kick off for the fall and really be
Yes.
on the ground running.
I think that was the apprehension to some of the other things that we were looking at were 12, 18 months long, and you're not using it until halfway through next school year. That's hard to maintain the energy of.
I agree, and listen, I want to give credit to other people that do this, and I don't even know which ones. Eric and I have not talked about who or what process. I just know other processes that I've been over time or that I've seen are very in-depth. I have a different philosophy on it. I don't think that having focus groups for 4 months and large, extensive, large-scale survey, if it makes as much sense to be in that same space, in that just overwhelming amount of information and meetings and conversation, I think it gets stale for people.
You end up with a really nice binder, but then it's so big and insurmountable that it's sort of like analysis paralysis.
I'm going to look at you that night to give you a sense of this. I'm going to say to you, so in that 2.5 hours or so, the leadership team of the board, I promise you no hand-holding, no hugs, no trust falls. I don't mean connecting that way, but there's some things I do with people that I think really maximize the group of people in the room's talents and just connecting on a deeper level. There's a lot of laughs and smiles, and people feel good about it, and it's conversation more than anything. And then we dig into, okay, here's what the overall process looks like, so everybody understands it. And this is why it's important. Not in as much detail as what I can do, but here's the overall. They've got a really fascinating mission. All different companies that have defined very clearly, here's our fundamental purpose. And then I'm going to say to you, and put that QR code up on the screen, what do you think your fundamental purpose is? Tell me, what is your mission? What is your fundamental purpose? And you're going to throw a bunch of ideas in and get excited about that and start to look at other people's ideas, and you're going to rate each other's ideas, and then we're going to break up into groups and say, okay, now what resonates with you? Have a conversation. You looked at the 50 comments that the whole group put in the past 5 minutes, and it's facts. What resonated with you? What jumped out at you? And you're going to look at each other in those groups, 3 or 4 groups, and say, I really think we ought to be focused on whatever it is. We need to make sure we're making it clear to our community that our mission is this. And then I'm going to say to the group, okay, what resonated with you? What resonated with you? What resonated with you with the 3, 4 groups, whatever it is? I'm going to say to you, okay, so what I heard you just say, and I've scribbled a ton of notes, what I heard you just say is that the Skinny Central School District fundamental purpose, your mission is, and there will be a couple of ideas that came from this group, this group, this group. And you're looking at each other and saying, yeah, that's who we are. And I'm going to say, great, now let's talk about your vision. And then we're going to finish and do the exact same thing, and then let's talk about your program values. And then we're going to leave, and I promise you, with smiles, and we'll have to just find a way to show that through masks at the end of that night. And I'm going to take all that, and I'm going to send it back to Eric. How did we do? Here's my draft. This is what I heard you say. From all the notes I took in the 3 exchanges, this is what it sounds like. Your mission, your vision, your program. So it's that instead of months of meetings to talk about that and writing 2 pages. So I'm sure that there are people that do that that will say, well, I don't know, that just seems like too efficient. I just think it's much more practical. And you could spend forever talking about that, and what I would like to refer to sometimes as admiring the problem, or get it done and keep moving. So.
I think just, from my experience, it's short, memorable, usable. Things that are authentic, things that speak to the community, your mission, your vision, the things that you aspire to become. But unless it's something you can rattle off, you don't have one.
Gary, I know you have a question. Come on, Gary.
I'm the shy one. I scan the QR code.
Right, the shy one.
So, I got 1 or 2. So, I like the short and sweet version and all that sort of fun stuff, right? However, I think our objective is, well, let me ask the first question first. What is the deliverable from you guys? Because a 3-month time window obviously does not give us a successful development, implementation, execution of a strategic plan that spans 5 years. So what exactly is the deliverable?
Correct.
In concise terms, what's the deliverable?
Great question. The deliverable is a plan,
Documentation.
a document, yes, that articulates probably at least 4, and I'd say no more than 6, priorities for the district. Areas, broad areas, and within each of those areas, an action plan to accomplish your objective.
Good. Beautiful concepts. Lovely. And that's why a 3-month horizon is realistic.
Correct.
Right? Good. Our decision making revolves around that first stage, but more so the next 17 stages that are associated with the successful delivery of a strategic plan. My experience has been that, and it's kind of in the private sector than anything else, because you're always doing a 5-year plan, it is continuous, it is ongoing, and implementation avoids the beautiful document sitting on the shelf, like open to say. So my question, or like to you, is we need to see the entire plan. This is but the starting point. And if we had to fund or authorize the funding of, we're going to get it in close to the budget season and all that sort of fun stuff. If we were to, I wouldn't be a fan of authorizing a phase that doesn't link to a full end result. Otherwise, we're just going to spend money there, and then you're not going to buy and all that sort of fun stuff. So, can you speak to the rest of it?
Yeah.
I know your scope is, as you just described, but could you speak briefly to the rest of what really gets us a successful implementation of a strategic plan?
Absolutely. First, I would say to you, this is not a 5-year plan. This is a forever plan.
Yep.
And it's a 3-month plan. What I mean by that is the initial plan and those action plans, when your leaders sit down to do the action plans that are within each of those priority areas, they'll look at some items and say, there's no way we can do that next year. So let's put that in 22 or 23, 24, or 24, 25, whatever it may be. And there is no time limit to that. Now, it wouldn't make sense, and I would say to the group, if they said, let's put that in 2029, 30, I'd say, I don't think that probably is not realistic, right? Because life is going to change dramatically between now and then. But it becomes a plan that should be updated annually by you. You don't need to have any of us come back. Sometimes we do that, and people would like that because they like an outside facilitator. But absolutely by you, updated every year. And what I would recommend to you is, you take this document, so you're looking for, okay, how do you implement it, right? You take this document, Eric presents it to you, you adopt it as a board. You communicate it now far and wide to your faculty, to community groups, whomever it may be, using the same information. Here's an overview of the plan, we'd like to share this with you, and here's the written material. And you email it out to your community, you put it far and wide. We're so excited, this is the work that we're doing. This gives us our charter for the next several years. It will be updated every year. And then, as you develop your schedule for board meetings next year, you incorporate those updates on the plan. So in other words, now people know that in the action plan, I'm driving towards, I'm going to be giving these regular updates. So as a board is going to be, when you look at that plan, did you do it or not do it? And the presentations are going to be, we did this, this is the progress we made, this is where we're at, or we didn't get there yet, we couldn't get the committee together. It's not going to happen, we have to push it up till next year. It's a very upfront process to say, you know, here's exactly where we're at, this is what we did and what we didn't do at this point. And then in terms of measurable, like the notion of success, yes, if one of your action steps is, for example, to convene a committee to study your graduation rate, or you've already done that, so it's to implement the graduation rate suggestions from the committee and improve our graduation rate by 5%. Well, that's clearly measurable. That's entirely up to you to drive as a district. Some districts drive towards specific numbers. Most do not, because of the way that numbers are interpreted, are used, or not valued sometimes, or dependent on variables that are out of our control. But yes, that's entirely up to you.
Okay, because that's my, I mean, I just find that's where we get lost, and not skinny else everywhere.
Yeah.
It's too global, it's too fluffy, and there's no concrete, we will increase graduation rates by X amount, it's
No.
measurable.
Carrie, I agree totally, and then they don't go back to to it, they don't review it.
Right, that's when it
Well,
gets
we're-
put on the shelf and it's
right.
a decoration.
And what I think people are clamoring for here is a North Star. Like, this is what everything we do is gonna fit under this umbrella, it's gonna be in this direction. And if you have a great idea, show me where it fits in our plan. And if it doesn't fit in our plan, that's where some of the flexibility comes in. Look at the changes to public education over the last 2 years. You know, some of that flexibility has to be built in. But that's supposed to be the core. In the research that Gary shared, one of the great lines I pulled out of there, it was talking about, like, what is the moral imperative for your district? Now, what are you obligated, what are you obligated to be for your community? And unless we're all saying the same thing, we don't have one.
That annual review, I think, is key too, right? So often when people will come with, we ought to be looking at this, really. Yes, we should. And let's talk about that as part of our blueprint day this year. And when we revise our plan, we should keep that in mind. I would then suggest that every couple of years, you go back out and ask the community for feedback. I wouldn't do a thought exchange or another tool of gathering feedback every single year. I think you will never, you'll constantly be spinning your wheel like, well, we didn't even get the other work done yet. Now we're going back out and asking again. I think you need to be committed to what people gave you the first time and then go back out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. Again, I'm just concerned with execution.
Sure.
For example, and to make sure we understand the scope that you're offering. It's really the starting point. It sounds like it's truly the starting point.
I would think the execution rests solely with Eric. As the superintendent of the district, the execution and the people that are going to execute this plan all report to Eric, and if the plan is not executed as agreed on by everyone, really, that falls on your shoulders, and then ultimately the board's, because it's our responsibility to make sure that you're doing your job, but.
Yep.
Do you know what my annual goals are every year? Basically boiled down to accomplish the blueprint. Honestly, we articulate them further and have a rigorous evaluation process, between myself and the board, but they all reflect, get the blueprint done, that's the work. To your point, yes, that's exactly, and we love it administratively and hold ourselves accountable to that because it tells us this is the work to be getting done. And then there's the day-to-day things that come up, obviously, and providing a safe, caring environment, all the things we do.
So just to piggyback on what we were just discussing there, as we set a vision, as we establish our values, as we go in and pretty much develop a framework for the strategic plan, we need to be sure, if Eric is the point person, which he should be, that we're setting you up to succeed.
Right.
So there needs to be a deeper dive into really and truly, if we craft a strategic plan in 3 months that looks like this, we've got to kind of jump ahead and say, okay, this product that we're developing really requires this sort of infrastructure to support it. Otherwise, Eric fails, we all lose our high-paying jobs. That's a joke. I am cracking up people there. So
Right.
I think, and again, we're going to authorize this thing, right? One or the other. So we need to, I think, even on the front end, in addition to everything you just described, which just gives us a flavor, we need to make sure that we have some time budgeted in there to figure out what sort of structure we need to support it.
So just to fill you, Kevin, we've been talking in this district for, gosh, Tom, you could probably say 10 years or more about just the structural inefficiencies that happen, positions that are out of whack, missing, things like that. So that's something that we're looking to explore too. And if I'm not, speaking out of turn, I think Gary's spot on, is that if your goal is this, you have to make sure your organization is structured in such a way that that's possible.
So let me just offer this idea that I think picks up right on what you're saying. When I mentioned on that day, that blueprint day, that those 50 or so people, that we want to harness their ideas, their perspective, their feedback, and not have them do the planning part, the other reason is for what you just said. Because the last day, the action planning day with the leadership team, comes down to capacity. And the leadership team looking at each other and saying, okay, those 50 ideas are fantastic. But we can't necessarily do all 50 of those things right now. And so Eric and the team play a huge role in that, in saying, guys, we can't assign those 10 things to that one committee. But we can be thoughtful about that and know that they're going to work on this year, and then work on that the following year. And these are the building blocks. That's why we depend on the leadership team to do the actual, how's it going to get done, when's it going to get done. So it's Eric determining that with the team to say, yeah, no, we have to push that out. And it's very transparent with the large stakeholder group, right? So when I introduce it, I say to them, you're going to come with 50 ideas today. Not all 50 of them are going to end up in the plan. Over time they may, but for today, understand, and it's just honest at the beginning, they can't necessarily all fit in the plan. We will come back to them. Most of it will land in there. And there's no bad idea. I mean, all those concepts of brainstorming. But the leadership team, that's their job. And I say that very clearly to people. That is their job. We're going to depend on them to do their job.
And I just want to make everybody aware, looking at the time, some of our board members had a 6:30 obligation via Zoom, so I just want to make everybody aware of that.
And just so everybody's aware, it's a NYSBA book study that we are doing. That's what we are leaving for, not for some super exciting secret thing. It's a book study. It's a very exciting book, but it's a book study.
If you all would like, if you're marinating on this over the next couple of days and you have questions, send them to me, and then I can work with Kevin and get answers to those questions for you, and we'll decide how to go forward.
I think the last thing I'll just say, kind of to what Gary was saying and what you were saying, if I'm understanding correctly. The biggest thing on this is going to be communication. So if for an example, our plan, our mission and our vision all revolve around, we want to become a top foreign language school and start teaching it from pre-K. You know, obviously that's not going to start in September with 15 new foreign language teachers and 8 different languages offered, because there are budget and people concerns around that, and that would take time to develop. But that will be on Eric to communicate, this is our goal, and this is what we're doing right now to prepare to reach that target, because it takes a longer time.
And
So
that's what I like about it. It's out there, it's public, it's constantly waved around. This is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it.
So if I'm a taxpayer in the Brighton School District, I can go on the Brighton website and see the blueprint. And the blueprint is updated on an annual, if not more often basis for your current goals for your district, and they're measurable for what you actually do as a superintendent.
And I am assuming you're not a Brighton taxpayer, but even though you're not, you can even go on there and do that tonight.
Yes.
So, yeah.
in your free time, Tom.
If you go right to the, it's one of the tabs on our website, the blueprint, it's a constant part of our conversation. People hear about it all the time. In fact, lately, when we've been answering questions about a variety of topics, our board goes right back to all the time, and this is where it is in the blueprint. Interestingly, when you do get questions from community members, so I'll use your example, why aren't we teaching foreign language in kindergarten? Well, it's not part of our blueprint. Or in the budget process, even better, why are you adding foreign language teachers at the primary level? Oh, because our strategic plan, our blueprint says that that's what we were going to do based on feedback from the community. Oh, okay, I got it. Yeah. It becomes like thoughtful as opposed to, well, we thought it would be a good idea and we wanted to do that. No. It's part of our plan. Stakeholders came together and they drove that.
So just to clarify, we are looking at hiring you from the temperature check through the board formally adopting.
Yep.
And then at that point, we as a district take on the quarterly updates and we are moving on without it.
Yep.
So how do you make up for the fact that we're looking at making a strategic plan that's plans for the future of the district in the next 3 months, given the environment that we are teaching and working and learning in right now, given the community concerns right now? How do you, as you facilitate, overcome, take out the white noise, focus on the future, and not what is taking up so much of our time right now?
So fascinating that you asked that question. I was with a district the other night who has a lot of really strong opinions about that. I'm guessing, honestly, probably stronger than the opinions here. A lot of very, very anti many things. And there was a great concern going into it that that's going to distract from the entire conversation, the exchange of the food, those comments. There were barely any comments about that. And the comments that were didn't rate very high. And so they didn't even become part of the conversation, number one. Number two, you control for it by simply saying, when we get together and we analyze the data together, that, okay, those are present concerns and those are things people want us to know about. So one thing that happens once you have this exchange data, and that's all included in this, there's going to be other information that all of you as a board and then Eric are going to want to look at and think, okay, that might not be part of the plan, it didn't make it into the 4 buckets, but it's still a lot of feedback from your community on where you're at and how they feel about the work that you're doing. So there's value to that as well. It just, again, my personal opinion, I think the work that we're talking about doing in our schools today transcends all of that. Because, although I would have said this a year ago, the pandemic won't still be here. So,
But you have experience with facilitating.
oh yeah, absolutely.
these in our current environment. That's what I want to make sure.
Even in ours, so we update ours every year and have this conversation, and we get comments like that, and we say, okay, great, thank you. That's, we appreciate that. That's important information, and that will impact our work tomorrow. Our actual practical on the ground work. But in terms of the bigger picture of the work that we're doing, COVID has almost nothing to do with implementing foreign language beginning at the primary level. We need to actually, I think, push away from that. Acknowledge it, not dismiss it. It's important. We want that feedback, but let's not let our organizations be distracted by the current circumstance. I think it's dangerous. We take steps back if that's all we're talking about. I don't know about you, but I think everybody, wherever they are on all those issues, does not want to keep talking about it. It doesn't mean that we don't want to give people space to say, yeah, but I'm struggling with masking and I'm
Preaching to
struggling.
the choir.
Yeah, it's still legitimate, but let's move forward. And if we're only talking about that, we can't move forward.
Thank you.
So I actually think that it's a strategic plan. So we're operating in a strategic space at this level, for this part of it. So current situations should be filtered out, blah, 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 like you said, right? My concern, once again, is next stage. Because that is where the rubber meets the road. Execution. That is where the rubber meets the road. That's where reality hits in. That's where COVID is in our face. That's where the next major issue. Now, from everything we're saying, you're not involved in that part. You're only here to start, or your proposal is pretty much to establish a strategic plan. Right? So, again, something that we're going to have to really, really cognizant of is that our environment is going to affect implementation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to substantially affect implementation.
And I think the important thing is to be honest about that, where it does impact it, and where it can be avoided, or where you identify, no, we're not going to use that as an excuse. You don't,
Correct. So, and again, I'm going to be talking amongst ourselves here. Strategic plan, development framework, boom, this bucket.
Yep.
The thing that we're responsible for is ultimate execution and delivery, and even if you're executing it. That's why we're spending all this time doing it.
Yeah.
And the environment is a significant part, so we've got to make sure and school up for that as well.
And this is all at the kernel of it, to make sure our kids benefit from this work.
Mission and vision.
I would just follow up in 2 ways. One, our plan was in 2020 impacted, our blueprint was impacted by COVID in the sense that we said that summer, we had been doing this for a very long time, we said actually, we need to dial the plan back and only focus on 2 areas, and one was COVID, and one was academic. And so we kind of took a modified version. Again, after doing this work for many years, we said we're going to depart from our learning process. So it does impact, I don't want to be dismissive of that. But to your point, one, I don't want to say also that I walk away and I really walk away. My point was, for a lot of people that I've done this work with, I talk to them all the time. So I'm still a resource, we're colleagues, we'll talk all the time. Hey, it's not really, this group didn't do really well with this, or how have you seen, so I'm still always there as a resource. This doesn't end. I think part of the collegial piece of this, and because you're working with an organization that is part of the work with you, we're always going to work together and keep working on it. So I don't just dump it and run. But a key point to this is the way the plan is set up, it is set up to be implemented. I mean, it is an implementation plan in and of itself. So you literally just need to roll out, do the work, execute the work you said you do. If you said you're going to have a committee that's going to study foreign language,
Which is how it works.
you got to get the committee together and do it. I mean, that's,
But that's the heavy lift.
yeah.
That's really and truly the heavy lift.
So you didn't want to announce that you're doing.
That's just an example. Just an example.
Foreign languages, right?
I know that some of us are late for the NISBA, the training as well, so we can wrap it up now unless you guys have any other questions. And like I said, I'm sorry to cut you short, but if you have anything else, flow it through me and I'll get questions answered and I'll share with the whole board the way I always do.
So with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn with our appreciation to Kevin McGowan for the presentation tonight, as well as entertaining our questions, and follow by email through your.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning at 6:34, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.